Well, thanks so much indeed. Welcome to the show. I am Jim Ferguson, and I've got a wonderful guest here with me for the second time, Nazarin Veronica. Welcome, Nazarin. It's great to see you. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. Great to see you too. And I'm doing very well. Just, yeah, few stresses in my life so far, but it's okay. How are you doing?
Well, I'm the same, but you know something, at least I know I'm not the only one that gets the odd stress from time to time. But you know what? We can forget all about that because we're going to have some fun here. We're going to have a chat about lots of interesting things. And I know because I think you've got a great channel, and I would remind people to follow you because you put out some really interesting content. And there was one tweet there quite recently that caught my attention. You were talking about the possibility of a third world war. We've had two already. Third world war could be a big game changer. And the reason why I'm particularly interested in that, Veronica, is because when Richie Sunak was still prime minister, he was talking about conscripting young people, 18-year-old, mainly men, I guess, but possibly women as well, into military service. And then he was on a television interview where he talked about, he was questioned about it. He didn't like getting the question, but the presenter said, look, you're talking about the fact that you might arrest these young men if they refuse to fight. You might take away their bank accounts. You might remove their driving licenses. And he basically said, yeah. And now we've got Sir Keir Starmer in as Prime Minister. He's talking about conscription now as well. So do you think that the globalists are so insane and evil that they might actually try to lead us into a third world war? What do you think?
I do think that a lot of people have noticed there are steps that we seem to be taking, which seem to be moving towards a third world war. Like you said, Rishi Sunak talking about conscription, that actually made, headlines. That was it was in the mainstream news as well. And I think a lot of young people, as you may know, young people are very hesitant to speak out when it comes to issues that we talk about very often.
Mhm.
But with this, they were actually speaking out about it online, saying that they will refuse to join the army, refuse to fight for this country because they don't feel that what they're fighting for is even worth it, which is true. I wouldn't, if I was a man, I wouldn't fight either. Well, now women can fight too, but yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that happened. Keir Starmer also talking about the war and how we need to help Ukraine more, even though we know that the whole war is just a money laundering scam. And yeah, there were so many signs leading up to it, even before I saw this video. But then I saw the video of Andrew Bridgen doing an interview. I think it was with Resistance GB.
Mhm.
And he was talking about the fact that in Parliament they were, openly speaking about the fact there could be a war, a third world war. And Rishi Sunak saying that he was calling a general election because he didn't want to be a wartime prime minister was also, I know this is just alleged things people are saying, but if he heard this, it does raise alarms. And then if you add it together with the fact he was talking about conscription, it does add up. So I feel that it's really important at this point to prepare for a war. Just like generations before us did when there were world wars, they prepared as well. And the people who prepared were the lucky ones who, not lucky because they did make that decision, but they were the ones who survived and thrived and did not feel that their lives were massively impacted as a result of the war. Whereas people who were not expecting to go into a war and didn't think that there was a necessity to prepare for it, they did suffer. And, a lot of them died as well from malnutrition and starvation. So I do not want to be on rations. I think that's a very oppressive way to live. I don't want to be told what I can and can't eat. I don't want to be limited to grains and rubbish food, which lacks in nutrition. I think that it's important to a lot of me personally, and I don't want to feel that I'm going to go without. So that's why I'm currently making steps to build relationships with farmers. I go to shop at farmers markets every week, multiple times a week, and I'm always talking to them. I've began to drink raw milk as well. So I don't want to go without raw milk. And I think that I am thriving as a result of drinking raw milk and having quite a lot of animal products in my diet. So I've made friends with the farmer who sells raw milk. His shop's called Hook and Son. So he sells his milk in Borough Market mostly, and that's where I go. And yeah, I think it's really important right now to build connections with the farmers because they're the ones who are going to help us. It's not the government who are going to help us. The rations are not going to actually, our body what it needs. The rice, porridge, um, sugary drinks, I believe. I don't think that we are going to be provided with the food that we need to thrive by the government in this time. So yeah, we need to definitely be making steps. I would say if you have the ability to, definitely grow your own food because you'll never go without. If you have enough food that you're growing, even especially if you plan it so that you plant food for each season, you're out. So yeah, that's what
Well,
I
that's really interesting. Really, really interesting because we're doing that within our international freedom movement. We are actually reaching out
yeah.
to people internationally. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with you about Freedom Train International, but that kind of stuff that you're doing and interested, that's what we're doing. So we'll need to maybe have another conversation, maybe off camera about all of that, because what you're doing is exactly what I want all the other people to do all around the world. And just to give you a bit of a heads up, so we created a freedom movement that I took, I'm the founder, took about 15 months to pull it all together, reached out to multiple countries, and we launched just a few months ago. But we have multiple thousands of members in America and in Canada, the UK. We've got people in Australia, New Zealand, and I've been focusing a lot on Europe. And it's for that very reason, because the globalists want to, in my opinion, corner the food supply, because it was once said, if you can control a nation's oil, you control that nation and its wealth. But if you control the food, you control the people. So what you're talking about sits very well with me. But let's go back to, I mean, if there was a war, for example, I mean, inevitably, probably they're going to target Russia, right? Because the Ukraine's losing and they're desperate to hold on to it. There's a lot of mineral wealth, of course, in Ukraine. There's trillions and trillions of dollars of minerals, and it's very, very rich, fertile area. So the globalists kind of want to get their hands on it completely. But I mean, I think you're right. It does look like they are mad enough to actually take us to war. And my concern is that if that happens, it's a whole different kind of type of warfare compared to what World War One and World War Two. I mean, that was bad enough. But we're talking about potentially the thought of nuclear weapons as well. So that's horrific. And you're also right. Most young people, I mean, I agree with them. Why would you want to fight for the likes of Sir Keir Starmer or Richie Sunak? They're globalists. They've got no interest in the people in Great Britain. They've no interest in you or me or the other ordinary people that just want to live their lives in peace. They're following a globalist agenda, and it's not an agenda that benefits the people in our respective countries all around the world. It's benefiting them, and there's a lot of greed, there's a lot of corruption involved. But
Yeah.
I mean, what you talk about potential things like food shortages. I mean, how do you see that potentially playing out? Because a lot of people think the government's going to be there to save them, and I don't believe they are any more than during the COVID-19 vaccine thing. I mean, I know that you're not vaccinated. I'm not vaccinated. I completely refuse to do it because, like you, I was just concerned about the whole thing. It just didn't sit right with me. But a lot of people believe the government or did believe the government. But do you think people are waking up to that now? Do you think people are going to believe the government if they tell people that they've got to send their sons and daughters to die in the battlefields of Ukraine? Do you think they're going to buy that?
Well, what I've noticed is there does seem to be a massive awakening happening at the moment. People have realized they were lied to in the past 4 years, and I think that's it's backfired on the government because people are not going to trust them as much as they did before. And I was having a debate with someone from my workplace the other day, and he was very against pretty much everything that I believe, and he was arguing in, the opposite. And funnily enough, I was sure that he was going to disagree with me on the COVID vaccine bit. But when I mentioned it, he actually said that he did get vaccinated and he really regrets it. And I was in shock. I couldn't believe it, because that's the last thing I would expect him to agree with me on. And he did. And then I spoke to other people in my workplace about it too, because they overheard our conversation, and they were
Mhm.
also in agreement, but they were all vaccinated, or the ones I was sat with at that point. So I was quite amazed, and I have noticed that people have realized that the government did not have their best interests at heart when they were promoting that vaccine, and they listened to them then. And I've spoken to a lot of people, and they said that if something like that was to happen another time, like a massive emergency where people didn't know what to do and who to look to for help, they wouldn't look to the government for help, and they wouldn't trust the government. And so I have faith that if a war was to happen, the government's stance would not be the one that most people would go with. I don't know though. That's just my hypothesis. But I think that they've definitely broken the people's trust, and they will be less likely to trust them again. And now a lot of people are actually messaging and commenting on post conspiracy theorists who are giving an alternative side of things, and they are asking them for advice on current affairs and asking them what their view is, because they're much more likely now to take us seriously, because we were the ones who were warning them back then not to make that decision, and it's one they regret. So I think that we just need to carry on doing what we're doing, carry on spreading the truth, and carry on sharing that alternative view that we have,
Mhm.
because you can't really find it in the mainstream media anymore. I mean, I think GB News used to be quite good for that, but it's not really in recent times. Talk TV is not either, I would say. That's my opinion, but yeah, I don't
Mhm.
think that they're as good as they once were sharing alternative point.
But I mean, you've been on GB News a few times, haven't you? I mean, you're
Yeah.
quite high profile actually, because you took that principled stand that you weren't going to take the vaccine. And I think it was the BBC did a documentary, didn't they? And you kind of starred in that, because
Yeah.
that's I remember that's how I came across you, and I was like, yeah, this is really good, especially because you were so young taking that stand. And I thought that's one tough young lady that's doing that, and I admired you for it. So that's kind of how we kind of got in contact. But I mean, yes, I agree with you. The lying mainstream media are pretty much sold out to the globalist agenda as well. You just can't really trust them.
No.
But have you heard about the conspiracy theories? They're running out of them because they're all coming true, eh?
I know. It's so funny. Every single time it happens, I'm just like, there aren't going to be any left soon. It's going to be,
Yeah,
how can anyone look at it and just still believe that they're conspiracy theories when they're just all coming true one by one? And
yeah.
the ones that haven't yet probably will soon as well. I don't know. It's just, you can't really make this up. But
Yeah, it's like we're living in a film set, isn't it? I mean, do you ever think that this just can't be really happening? Because I sometimes think that.
what do I think? What, sorry?
It's like we're living in a film set. It's like
Yeah.
it's like we're living through some kind of a film, a sci-fi type film, and it's like you think, is can
Yeah,
this really be happening? It's so crazy, isn't it?
it does feel
But
like that. Have you ever watched The Truman Show?
yeah, yeah, I have done. Yeah, yeah, it's
That's
good.
how I
It's
feel
good.
every single day.
Oh, I'm glad.
I'm just like,
You.
what's real anymore? I don't even know. Even the weather doesn't seem real anymore.
Yeah,
I think they are manipulating the weather personally.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so that part in the Truman Show when he's standing on the beach and then it suddenly starts raining just on him, and it's like a malfunction
Yeah.
with the weather machine, and it's raining only on him and nowhere else. And he looks up, there's just this cloud above him raining, and then it's like, oh, sorry, we made a mistake, and they move it so that it's everywhere. That's how I feel every single day.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit like The Matrix. I know that's an older film. I don't know if you've seen that one, but there are
Yeah.
parts of The Matrix which kind of resonate with me as well. But it is a bit of a clown world, a crazy world. It's like the lunatics are in charge of the asylum, and I think it's important that our faith also gets us through it. Now, I know that you are a Christian as well as I am, so I think there's a real strength that can come from that too. But talking about things like being prepared and being ready for stuff, we had a really interesting conversation just before we went to record, and you're studying things like home births and things like that. I mean, we might see a need for that in the future if we go to war or the hospitals get taken out for whatever reason. It's pretty interesting stuff. Tell us a little bit about that. What have you discovered?
Yeah, so a while back, birth has always been something that's really fascinated me. Um, I was always, even from when I was a child, I was always really fascinated by it. And I remember I was in school and a friend of mine she had a baby sister coming, and she told me that her mum's going to have the baby at home. And I'd never heard of that because I'd only heard of giving birth in hospitals. But literally indoctrinated from a young age to believe that birth is a medical um intervention. It's not a natural thing, and you have to go to hospital, otherwise you can die. Otherwise, all these things can happen. The baby can die. There can be complications. You need to be in a hospital. You need to be drugged up because you don't want to feel the pain's so scary that And that's how I always saw birth. And then she said her mum was having her baby at home, and I asked my mum, "Is it true that you can have your baby at home?" And she said, "Yeah." So that's the first time I was introduced to home birthing. And then, yeah, I did more research on it more recently because my best friend, she was pregnant and she decided to have a baby at home. And I was actually supposed to be present at the birth. Unfortunately, I missed it because it happened at night time and my phone didn't ring. But yeah, I was meant to be there, and we were doing lots of research together and planning for it. And yeah, I've learnt actually through looking at stats that home birth is actually more that you're less likely to have a complication or a death as a result of birth than you are in hospital. And that's because when you're in hospital, you are first of all drugged up, so you can't even feel your natural instincts. You can't feel what your body needs to do. You'd have natural contractions, and you'd be able to go with them, and you would know what position to get your body into in order to have the baby safely. But when you have an epidural, for example, which literally numbs your body from the waist down, you can't feel those natural contractions. You don't know when to push. You don't know what position to get your body into. And we're taught to, lie on the hospital bed with your legs up, which doesn't make any sense because it is the least, if you think about it, with gravity,
Mm-hmm.
you need
Mm-hmm.
it to pull the baby down. So if you're laying on your back, the gravity is not going to help you then. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to work twice as hard to be able to deliver the baby. And actually, I forgot his name, but there was a king, and he was the one who actually decided that women should give birth laying on their backs with their legs up because he was perverted. So that's where that comes from, and we still use that now, which really surprises me because knowing where it comes, I think he was called King Louie or something. But he was a pervert who wanted to stare at women when they were giving birth with their legs open, and that's where that comes from. So yeah, the most natural position to give birth in is squatting or standing, so that gravity pulls the baby down, and it's so much easier in that way. So we were researching into that. Then, if you just think about it logically, if you're at home in a calm space where you feel at peace, you know where everything is,
Mm-hmm.
have people around you who you trust and love and have known for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
you feel so much calmer and your body is less tense. And so it doesn't hold that baby in for longer than it needs to. Whereas in hospital, what happens is labor lasts longer in most cases because you are tense, you are stressed out, you're being rushed by the midwives and nurses who are trying to get you out as fast as possible so they can move on to the next patient and get more money from, the medical procedure that is birth, unfortunately, in hospitals. And so, yeah, you feel tense and your body holds that baby in for longer because you are not relaxed and your muscles aren't relaxed. And yeah, so there are lots of complications that can happen as a result of that. And then, yeah, the fear,
Well,
I would say that fear is the main problem.
I mean, one thing's for sure. After what we've seen over the last 3 to 4 years, I think the medical establishment has lost a huge amount of trust. I think people have lost trust in doctors. Not all doctors. Some took a principled stand. Many of them actually came onto my show, but a lot of them went along with it, and they knew, but they were making money. And how can you trust people like that if you're going to be giving birth to a baby? The other thing as well is that hospitals are known for being places where you pick up infections. Whereas, and of course, the other big thing is you're quite correct in saying that you're in a calm environment with people around you that love you and you trust them. But also, for the baby's sake, that the baby feels the emotions of the mother and can detect that. So if the mother's stressed out, the baby will be stressed out. So the whole thing makes sense. I have seen in the past, there's like things like birthing pools, which I think are used for home births. I mean, there are midwives that can come in just to be on hand if something was needed. But I mean, I'm all for keeping things as natural as possible. I didn't know that about King Louis. The only King Louis I can think of was maybe KingLouis of France. I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah,
that
I
was him.
don't know what country he was a king of. I don't even know
Mm.
his name, but I'm pretty sure it was King Louis. But I
Mm-hmm.
can look it up after this and let you know. I'm sure somebody watching this will know and they'll comment it or something. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
really crazy that that is where our current birth procedure and position comes from.
Yeah.
Especially as we're a nation of, well, we're not, but most people in this world, unfortunately, are very easily offended. So to know that that's the person, a pe he was a pervert, and he is the
Right.
person who has decided that that is how women should give birth. And they're just following him, and they're just,
Mm.
saying, yeah, that's how I'm going to do it. But they don't even know themselves where it comes from. And that's because they don't know their own bodies. And I think we're so disconnected from our own bodies nowadays. We're just
Mm.
taught we don't trust our immune systems, for example. We're told to have vaccines because we don't believe that we were made to fight diseases and viruses, which, we know that our immune systems do that. Our immune systems are literally a natural vaccine. They are our protection, and people are trusting vaccines which aren't, what vaccines used to be. I mean, we're told that vaccines started off as just a weakened strain of a virus,
Mm-hmm.
whereas now there's aluminium, mercury, MSG, monosodium glutamate, which is a food flavor enhancer. Why is that in a vaccine? Food coloring I've seen as well in vaccines, fetal cells,
Mm-hmm.
bovine something, which is from a cow. Like, why are you injecting yourself with all these things? Um, so yeah, it's we are literally taught from school how to live, but it's not in a natural way, and it's in a way which we aren't in tune with our own bodies, and I find that really sad. And I had to really relearn so many things that I was taught wrongly in school, and I had to look at the alternative viewpoint and science on the other side and realize that I was lied to. But the thing is, the teachers were lied to as well, and they truly believe what they're teaching. And their teachers were lied to as well, probably. So it's a cycle which seems to be never ending, but I feel we need to end it
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
now.
one of the things, absolutely agree with you, and that's another thing that we're talking about is within Freedom Train, we're talking about creating systems, just like what you said yourself, actually, about
Yeah.
linking up with local food producers where they're growing organic foods, organic crops. They're not vaccinating their meat products, the cattle, the sheep, whatever. They're grass fed, and that's what you're putting into your body. Then, and I must admit, I'm a big meat eater. We were just talking about intermittent fasting before we went to recording. I do that all the time.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll only eat once in the day, and that's usually in the evening for dinner time, and then I can go the whole rest of the night and round the next time and
Yeah.
not eat. And I feel okay with it. It's not everybody that can do that, but I think I like it and it works for me. And if it works for you, then do it. Obviously, I'm not giving you advice to do it, but I mean you have to work these things out for yourself or get a doctor's advice. But what you and
Yeah.
I are doing is, I think, is it keeps your mind very focused. But going back to what we were talking about, growing our own food, people don't realize you can get a barrel, just an ordinary barrel. It could be a plastic barrel, although I would always caution against leaching of plastics into the soil, but maybe a wooden barrel would be better.
And grow
Um, uh,
potatoes.
and grow potatoes. Yeah, you read my mind. Are you doing that? Are you doing that?
I haven't yet, but I will, and I'm looking into it, and yeah, that's why I knew what you were talking about because
Yeah.
I've been spending so much time looking into how to grow everything one by one, so I can, I even want to get a book so I can write down the instructions on how to grow every single fruit and vegetable, so that if the internet ever cuts out, we
Mm,
never know what they're going to do to try and stop us from accessing information. I'll have it
yeah.
there in a book, and I can write down how much water each thing needs, how much sun each thing needs. So I think that's really important, keeping like a paper copy of every bit of information that we'll need during a time when there could be an emergency where they turn off the internet or turn off the electricity so we can't access the internet. So yeah.
Well, Klaus Schwab. I'm by the way, I'm delighted to hear all this. This is what everybody should be doing. You should be an ambassador with us, telling everybody this because I'll tell you what, it would. Would you? Well,
Yeah.
maybe see. Yeah, well, you could be an ambassador for Freedom Train. Maybe talking about all these sorts of things. I'm quite serious because we're really pushing forward now. I've been to the Netherlands 3 times. This is in the last sort of 8 weeks. Three
Mm.
times to the Netherlands, been to Switzerland, been to Denmark, been to Ireland, and about to head to Norway, France, and Germany, and probably Sweden as well. So, no, in all seriousness, we need to get ready because time is short, time is running out. But people can do these things themselves. They don't have to be reliant on a supermarket, You can grow
Yeah.
fruit trees in your garden, apple trees. I mean, cooking apples or eating apples, whatever it is. Um, I mean,
Also
lettuce is. Sorry.
canning food is
Oh, you're into canning as well. Oh my goodness.
I
You're
don't
into
yeah,
so many.
I haven't done it yet, but I know how to. So I'm going to start doing that soon. Pickling, canning, and fermenting is what will get us through. If you
Mhm.
grow things and you have, produce in excess where you feel, you're going to have to throw it away, you can can it. And that's amazing because it lasts years. Literally, it can last, well, depending on what you're canning, it can last years. So why would you not do that? And then you never have to throw anything away and you'll have food for emergencies. And yeah, my great grandma, this is a bit of a off topic, but it is actually in topic. But so my great grandma, she was an amazing woman. She's like an amazing example of what women can be. She had a farm and she had animals on that farm. She had cows, pigs, sheep, ducks, geese, you name it. She had it all. Rabbits as well. And she was so gentle with all the animals. She was, amazing. There was like no cruelty. And she used to wake up early in the morning, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., feed the animals in the morning. She grew everything as well. She had an entire field full of fruits and vegetables. She had apple trees. There were berries by the gate when you came in. And she had all her children home. She raised them in the most loving way, showed them how to grow food. They helped her on the farm. She raised my mum as well, basically, because my mum loved being there so much that she would just sometimes run away just to go to my great grandma's farm and just spend time there. So she was with her all the time as well, and she helped raise her grandchildren as well, her great grandchildren, me as well. And it was just when my mum tells me stories of her life there, it just sounds like the most amazing dream. And it's everything. She provided everything for the family. Even, bacon lard was reused over and over again. She had like infinite wisdom. She knew what to do if you had, a certain virus, or, she knew how to cure everything. She had a whole book where she'd written down what herbs help with what ailments. And it's just, I wish that I could be that. And I'm trying to learn how to be that. And unfortunately, it wasn't something that was taught to me by my immediate family. And I wish that I could have all that knowledge. So I'm trying to learn it bit by bit. And I hope to one day have my own farm and be what she was, because she is such an amazing example of what a woman should be, I think, and the knowledge that women should have to be able to raise her children, the future generation, and instill that knowledge in them. And yeah, I just think that it's just amazing. And yeah, if anything happened, a war or anything, she would have been fully prepared. And yeah, she was like, she lived through World War II, and everything was on that farm. So they didn't ever go without food. Her mum and her dad, they had everything there as well. So it's definitely important to prepare as much as possible. If you live in a city, it's really hard though. Like I do, I live in London. It's hard, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, no,
So,
not impossible. But where there's a will, there's a way. But you've
yeah,
raised some really important points there, actually. First of all, books are really useful. And we all use our phones and the internet and all that. But Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum is constantly worrying about this global cyber attack that's coming. And then we saw CrowdStrike, and we saw all the global outages where airports got shut down, hospitals, even doctor surgeries here in the UK were affected, schools, universities, you name it. And I did wonder about that at the time. I thought, is this a trial run? Are they preparing to see if their masterclass AI system can take it all down in one go? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But the fact that CrowdStrike is linked to Bill Gates, Microsoft, does make me wonder. But you've raised some such important points. I have a little place, and it's a farm that I bought probably a good 12, 15, 13 years ago, 14 years ago now. And the thing is, I've always like you, my grandparents were farmers, but they all died really young, and so I never got to know them. But they had farms down in the southwest, and they're quite big farms. They had lots and lots of cattle and sheep and different things, and they grew crops. They did all of that. So it was always, but then it skipped a generation because my mother and her sister were orphaned at a very young age. So they kind of just, they lost everything, really, started again. And that's what happens. That's what life is. You just have to take the knocks and keep getting up and keep on going ahead. So having animals is amazing. What you're talking about, getting up at like 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning to take care of the animals, that's what farmers do. I can tell you that's exactly what we do. Growing crops, and you know what the animals are eating. You know that they're not getting horrible vaccinations. I mean, there are things that need to be treated for, things like fluke and parasites, and they have to get drenches in their throat and stuff like that, the sheep, whatever. But I've always believed that you are what you eat. And if you're eating this fake meat that Bill Gates is pushing, for example, I just don't think that's good for you. That's going to cause all sorts of problems.
yeah,
So natural ways are definitely the right ways. But unfortunately, and you're right in this, that knowledge that our previous ancestors and generations had has largely been lost. And we live in a 24-hour economy now, where everything is worked out to the sort of the smallest degree in a supermarket. They know when that last bar of chocolate is going to fly off the shelf or that last can of beans is going to come off the shelves. And they automatically get reordered by the systems, the AI systems. But the problem with a just-in-time economy, Nazarin, is it's very fragile. And all it takes is something to effectively throw a spanner in the works, and that whole system comes tumbling down.
Yeah.
And the problem is these supermarkets don't have big inventories any longer. They don't have big warehouses attached, because if you've got literally hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of stock sitting in a warehouse, that's money supply. So they try to keep the warehouses very small. So they'll maybe get 3, 4, 5 deliveries in, sometimes per day, with the bigger supermarkets. But the problem is it's a very fragile system. So if a war was to break out, or there was hostilities to break out, or there was another pandemic to break out, and if it was a serious pandemic, not a scamdemic, but a serious pandemic, then that could affect the deliveries. It could affect the lorry drivers, the people who are supplying and taking the logistical stuff. It could affect the farmers. So you're absolutely 100% right. You're going to get a gold star for it, because you're looking at this, seriously, you are looking at this in a very deep way, not just from the food production and that survival and surviving and thriving, as you said earlier on, which I wrote down because it was a great phrase about surviving and thriving. You don't just need to survive, you want to thrive, and having alternative ways of treating even things like ailments. I mean, nature's a wonderful basket of ways of homeopathy and treating people. The medicines that the doctors prescribe to us, I don't think are doing us that much in the way of good. It's like they're keeping us on this conveyor belt because they make money out of people.
Exactly.
They don't really want to cure people, do they?
No, a patient cured is a customer lost. So why would they want to cure us if we're going to stop depending on them? Of course, they want us to carry on depending on them, because if we don't, they don't get money. So if you even think about it from a logical point of view, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand why people trust them if the medication is where their money is. Why would they want us to be healthy? So yeah, there are lots of people who are speaking out about the natural alternatives to different medications that we currently take for a variety of ailments. And I think Barbara O'Neill is someone who is definitely worth noting, because she has done an immense amount of research, and she can back up what she's saying with personal experiences and with experiences of her patients she's had. She is amazing. She reminds me of my great grandma, actually, the amount of knowledge that she has. My great grandma had that too. And that is something that comes only from experience. And yeah, she's, I think, 72 years old, and she looks amazing. I wouldn't say she's 72. So, and she has this youthful way of moving and speaking, and her mind is so clear. You can tell that she is a healthy woman. So I think that she's definitely worth looking into if you're looking to know more about the natural alternatives to medications. Yeah, she's amazing. But yeah,
Well, I think that's really good, and I will look her up, because we're preparing. I mean, over the last probably 13, 14 months, I've written 3 books. They've not been published, but they are books, and I've written all to do with the kind of things we've been talking about, and that is now up on Freedom Train International for the members. They can read it, they can follow it. It's there's a lot of articles up there, a lot of information about the kind of things we're talking about, but we're about to put a load more on. So if you have an interest in that, and what we'll do is we'll have an off-table conversation about how you might want to take that forward. There's loads to learn, but we learn from each other, and I've learned things from you today that I didn't know about. So I appreciate that. And I must say, I've always enjoyed the interviews with you, and I've enjoyed this one immensely, because there's a lot of things in common that we have an interest in there, clearly.
yeah.
But we are heading towards the end of the segment. This has gone past in a flash. It's only feels like 5 minutes I've been speaking to you.
I know.
So we'll need to
Very
get you back on again. Yeah, it's been great
Yeah, for
fun.
sure.
Yeah. However, as we always do, I always give our wonderful guests the last and final word. and I'm going to do that with you as well. So for the next 2 or 3 minutes, take as long as you want. Say whatever on your heart to say. On the go. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I just want to reiterate what we were saying. I think we need to go back to a much more natural way of life, how people were living before supermarkets, before the medications we currently have, before we were told that our bodies can't fight illnesses, because they can. And I think recently it has been proven to me that they can. And yeah, I think that we need to start homeschooling as well. I think that the current school system is set up to brainwash your children into not thinking naturally and not thinking. It is just one massive indoctrination system. We're taught to not question the government and to believe what they're saying. We're taught so many things that I've had to unlearn. And I think a lot of people are beginning to realize that now. And the only alternative to that is either finding a community which is like-minded and which has set up a system to, help to school your child, or homeschool. And if you can't teach all the topics because you don't feel able to, you can hire a tutor if you're able to do that. So there's, many options to do that. But I think that the issues we are seeing currently, they do start with school. They start at the very beginning of your child's life at school. And yeah, we need to start homeschooling. We need to prepare for the war as well, because I think that it is impending. Like, we can see it's happening. We can see the steps leading up to it. We can see that our government's getting us too involved in it when we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be poking the bear. We should not be forcing almost Putin to retaliate, because I think if I was in his position and I was seeing what Ukraine and the UK government, the US government were doing, I would probably retaliate as well. And I would also threaten them and say, listen, if you carry on, I'm going to retaliate and you're not going to like that. And we're not listening to him. So yeah, it's very clear what's going on. We need to go back to a much more natural way of eating. I think that when emergencies happen, supermarkets will just cut us off, and we could even see something like them saying that if we don't get vaccinated, we can't use the supermarket. If you don't stay home, and if we see you on camera that you left your house, then you can't shop here either. And if you have, it could even move to more of a social credit system where our opinions that we express online could lead us to be banned from supermarkets too. So yeah, make connections with your local farmers markets. Build those connections with the farmers if you can as well, because if you have close connections to them, they'll be able to supply you with food maybe when no one else can. Yeah, definitely start to be more self-sufficient, because we're going to need to be soon. And if you start learning those skills now, then you'll be all set.
Well, as we say in Freedom Train International, don't be scared, be prepared. That's our motto.
I love that. Yeah, I need to start working with you guys.
Well, I'll send you my other contact details, and then we'll arrange something, and we'll see what we can do. But you're definitely on the same page as us. I mean, there's no doubt, two ways about it. You're very wise, I have to say. You're very wise. You're very smart, very, very, very forward thinking, and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom here on the show here today. So it's been great to see you, Nazarin. Look forward to speaking to you really soon, and thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
All right. Well, for all the people who are out there watching this, listen, you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to Nazarin. She really knows what she's talking about. She's an expert in this, clearly. We've got to compare notes. But you know something? It's not as bad. Growing food's not so difficult, And even having some hens in your backyard, you get fresh eggs. You don't need to be like an expert farmer to do that. There's loads of things. And it just reminded me of something. I'm going to send you a little video of some chickens, Nazarin. You'll love this, because you'll see what I mean. But anyway, it's been great. And thank you once again for all the people who are liking and sharing this content. It's very much appreciated. I really do. I really do thank you for all the things that you do out there. I've got a great following here, and I'm very, very grateful to each and every one of you. And as I always like to say, you guys are the real stars of this show. So until next time, this is Jim Ferguson, and we'll speak soon. Bye bye for now.